Hello guys, hope you and yours are well. Welcome to part 2 of my trilogy, a celebration of our Scots sovereignty 2010 to 2021. So if you've seen the first part, you would have seen my introduction to common law and sovereignty, and you would have heard from Billy, a peculiar and very interesting man. If you've not seen it, I advise that you go into the video section and look for part 1. This part of the trilogy is going to be by somebody else, another sovereign. But I want to go back into a few things that Billy said in part 1. Quite a funny part was when he said about letters coming in the door and paperwork and that kind of stuff. How he doesn't open any letters to legal fiction. Return to sender, send it back to them. And he says, shop shut, shutters down, padlocks on. Supposed to use it as a business, isn't it? The corporate entity, the legal fiction, the name, it's a company. And that's what Billy done, he shut a shop on them. And that's what I've been saying the whole time. We just need to shut shop on them. They've shut shop on us. Now, you'll be waiting a long time for them to switch it back on for you. We just need to plug ourselves back in. We need to shut shop on them and plug ourselves back in. It's that simple. It's that simple, guys. Just stop giving them your consent. Stop giving them your power. You've got the power. You've got the full authority over them. They didn't have authority over you. You've got authority over them. You need to remember that. Now I'm going to introduce you to another sovereign, Indy. Many of you know Indy. Great man. A lot of love for the man. He's got a lot of love for everybody as well. So I want to introduce you to Indy. I'm just going to go and have a wee recap over the common law in case anybody is watching that's no saw the first part and wants to watch the first part after this. Basically, the common law's 3 golden rules with the common law is no harm, no loss and no damage. That's it, simple. Didn't harm anybody, didn't steal nothing, didn't damage any property. That's you standing within the common law. You didn't need any paperwork, you didn't need any certificate, and you don't need anybody's permission. It doesn't happen like that. The common law derives from the Bible. Comes from the 10 Commandments. There's only really one of the 10 Commandments that covers them all, which is love thy neighbour as love thyself. Right, so it's that simple. You just live in a vibration of love, yeah, and you're standing within the common law. It's that simple. Just love. You know what I mean? Just love people. Just don't hurt them. If you're causing harm, creating victims, you're breaching the common law, right? Don't care what any legislation says. If a bit of legislation, if you try to get hit with a bit of legislation, and you're not harming anybody or stealing anything or damaging anything, you're not criminal, you've not done anything wrong. And the legislation is not law. It's a rule of society, it's a parliamentary act that can be given the force of law, but only when consented to by the governed. And you consent by vote. You consent by registering to vote. As soon as you register to vote, you're consenting to all parliamentary statutes, acts and regulations. And if you're using the legal fiction, the block capital name, the corporate entity, then you're falling out of the common law and you're right into the legal realm. So you need to drop the legal fiction as well. If you want to properly stand within the common law, you need to drop that legal fiction. But at the end of each one of these episodes that I'm going to drop each night of the week, there's a speech by Christine Graham. Now you need to listen to that speech over and over again. It's got all the answers that Scotland needs within that speech. I'm going to drop that at the end of each episode, because at the end of this trilogy I'm drip feeding you day by day. I'm going to drip feed you information for you to absorb. And come the end of the week, like, there's something, I've got to drop something big at the end of the week, but you need to listen to the Christine Graham speech over and over, because you need to know what that says to piece together the jigsaw that I'm going to put in front of you. Each episode's a dot, right? And you just need to join the dots to see the picture. And you're not going to see the picture that I'm going to be presenting to you without listening to the Christine Graham speech. So I'm just going to introduce you to Indy. Enjoy, and I will have a wee chat with you after Indy's discussion.
Operative, yeah. Oh, what? That's your operative word in this. No good, right? Because it is about being good. As Nala was pointing out, it's about living it right, living by the 3 rules. That's all we need, the common law rules. I got up here to talk to you for a few minutes about bollocks. This is a legal book. This is actually the Police Operational Handbook 2011. Very interesting. Have you read it?
No.
Have you thought about reading it?
No.
Because I tell you this, yeah?
No.
Because I tell you this, in this little book are all the offences that they say you can commit, and their standards of proof of how to say that you've committed them. And if you don't know those things, how can you gainsay this twat in a uniform who's telling you that you've broken the law? We have to know what they call the law. It's not, it's legislation. We know that. That's a buzzword, it's a buzz phrase. It's gone around this, it's gone around SSOTL. We know this thing, but we also need to know this. We need to be versed in the system that they are hitting us with every day. Now then, this is full of bollocks. No, honestly it is. It's full of bollocks. It's their made up rules, their made up bollocks. You've just admitted you don't know it. Great. I've done a law degree. I don't know it either. I know some of it, but I don't know all of it. They've been writing these laws for hundreds of years. They don't know them all either. That's what he's proving. They don't know their own laws, legislation, rules that bind them. They do not follow the rule of law. And that's how we pick them. That's how we win. By actually looking at the rule of law, deciding what they're doing is not according to their own rules, their own society's rules. That's how you hurt them. And each one of you in here is your own lawyer. Each one of you here has to fight your own case. Each one of you here has to stand up and be the good man or good woman and know it. Know it from the bottom to the top, because they will throw you out on technicalities. And make no mistake, there is no magic wand going to be waved and we're all going to be able to walk away saying, oh well, that's done now, just because one person goes. It's going to take one person, 2 persons, etc. Thousands. You've got to gum up the courts, you've got to gum up the police stations, you've got to have the guts to go out there, stand in front of them and say, no. Now you pursue it. And when you pursue it and do it wrong, I'm going to sue your buttocks off. As Nala was saying, we're going to see somebody who's in the Nick tomorrow. And he's going to introduce me. He's introducing me as a lawyer. I'm going to stand there as a lawyer. I'm going to talk to them as a lawyer. It's my right. They cannot make legal determinations because they're not lawyers. I can interpret legal documents. That's what training as a lawyer does for you. You become something else, a damned lawyer. And we're all going to hell because we all like twisting words, twisting meanings, and making things that on the face of it look like Janet and John went for water. It turns it into something completely different about fracking, etc., etc. That's what lawyers do. But lawyers don't always have a part to play. And this is the part of history, I hope, in which you all become what you should be, responsible, good men, women of Scotland, and go and stand in front of them with their books. You pick these books up from the junk pile that you never bothered to go to in the first place, and you learn their law and you learn their precedent and you smack them with it. You hit them. That's the only thing they're going to understand in their world. There is another way, but that's outside of their world, and it's going to be very nasty and violent. I don't want to go that way, because they've got all the big sticks and all the guns. That's kind of what I wanted to say. I love you all, because I know there's some really, really good brains in here. I know there's some really, really intelligent people in here. And there are some people who are sitting there thinking, no, not me, I'm just an ordinary, normal, stay-at-home person. I've never done anything. You are the heroes. This is a new Greek mythology, or Scottish mythology, Viking mythology, call it what you like. This is a new struggle of titanic proportions. He's bloody Hercules pulling down the towers, little scrawny bloke up there, but he's strong as hell. He's not giving in. And we've all got our place, we've all got our name. Mercury's sitting over here, over there's Athena, etc., etc. Call yourselves what you want, but you're all the heroes of this, because you're the ones that are here.
It's only ever going to be a very small number who are going to learn this legally to have a...
That's right.
Are able to do it.
Yeah, that's right.
I'll never have it.
You will always have a voice, and you'll always have an audience to speak to. And that's what I'm talking about. We've all got to do our bit. You may not have to fight in court. That's not for everybody, it's for some. But before you start attempting actions and doing actions, make sure you know all about that action and its ramifications. And that takes using their books, using their knowledge, using the stuff that they've put up. Because they put it up 100, 200, 300 years ago over here. This was where they wrote, where they did their thing. I'll be moving about a bit, sorry mate. That's where they started it. And they kept piling on top and on top and on top and on top and on top. And today they work with, well, they've got so many. All they can do is work with a little bit here that worked and a little bit there that worked and a little bit there that worked. And they put that across on you as if everything has the weight. And it doesn't. It's not true. It just isn't true. They are picking and choosing, and then they're perverting. That's the lovely part about it. That's where we get them. They're perverting the little bit that they're using. So they're ultra-vires. They're out beyond their own powers. But if you don't know they're doing that, if you can't spot it and say, that's where you're wrong, they'll get away with it, as they've got away with it for hundreds of years, until their system is so sloppy, it's unbelievable. I went and studied it, and I couldn't believe how sloppy it was. I put questions about sovereignty, etc., etc., to my lecturers and fellow students, and they just went, common law? It's 2 weeks of a degree course. So all they gave us 2 weeks. Yeah? 2 lectures, 2 seminars. Just to tell us that the common law, well, basically doesn't exist anymore. They're supplanting it with European law, which is civil law. I'm in an interesting position here because I'm an English lawyer. This is Scotland. This is another jurisdiction. So what I know for down there doesn't necessarily work for up here, and vice versa. Scottish jurisdiction is not the same as the English because the common law works differently. And there's a lot of civil law in Scottish law. Civil law is European law. So they're muddying the waters. And they're trying to get you back to Roman law, the civil law of Europe, with all the legislation that's going on at the moment. And that shouldn't be allowed to happen. Scots law is what matters. Scots law is for the Scots. It's here. It's a different thing altogether to the three that I've just mentioned to you. Even the one that operates over you in this piece of land isn't really Scots law. It's a bastardised something or other wherein they hide Scots law from the Scots. Who's going to pull it back? The Scots. Who are they? They're here. They're sitting here, right in front of me now. I claim Scottish ancestry, which is why I have so much passion for what's going on here. I help him whenever he shouts. I'll help anybody who shouts. But if you're going to get yourself into trouble, make sure you knew what you were doing in the first place. Make sure you know what the fight's going to be. When I first met him, and we first started talking about his particular little fight, I said, "You do know where this is going?" And he looked at me and he went, "Aye." And I went, "Yeah, you're certain?" He went, "Aye, aye, I can." And I went, "Right, well, can you go to jail?" And he went, "I can that too." I told him it as I saw it, because that's where he's going. If he wants his case, his little case, the little case of a couple of motoring offences, if he wants that to go and carry all the way through to the High Courts with the loaded question of Scots law hanging on to it, he's got to go to jail. He's got to suffer all sorts of shit. And you've got to do that too. He was lucky in a way because they screwed up on what they did and had so many things wrong with it that he can go, "Take me up the courts. You screwed there, I'm appealing." And he's appealed and appealed and appealed and appealed, and it's taken a lot of time, it's taken a lot of knowledge, a hell of a lot of research. You're prepared to do that research. Tress, you're prepared to do the research. I know Ian is. Was Julia? Leslie. Is there a Julia in the house, or am I just wishful thinking?
Wishful thinking.
You got to be prepared to do the work, and that's what I like about coming here, making the journey here, to see you here and doing this. And my little words here are words of encouragement. You've got to talk your own legalese. You've got to be your own firm of lawyers, if you like. You can talk about it and work it out, and you need to get together and work together hard together. There can be no other way, in my opinion. There are others who will say that there are other ways and you can sit back and do nothing and all the rest of it, but I don't believe that. You're going to have to work. It's pretty much all I wanted to say, apart from keep doing what you do. I can't say much about the stuff that went on site, etc., because I just haven't been on for quite a while. But that man knows a hell of a lot. I've got a piece of paper that says I'm a lawyer. He should have that piece of paper because he knows at least as much as I do. He remembers more than I do. Yeah, really. He remembers dates and section numbers, you know. And he sits there and goes, "According to criminal law, di-da-di-da-di-da-di-da-di-da," and I'm sitting there going,
check that.
Oh yeah, I remember that now. Oh yeah. Well, what about section 15B? Oh, section 15B, and he's away. That's the way you've got to be. It's the only way to be, and it's not going to be that hard. You can learn it off by rote. You can write it down as little snippets and just repeat them to yourselves every day for 3 months. Put it down. Give yourself another list. And then do it again. And then go back to exams. Do it. Learn it. Repeat it. Repetitive. Get it inside there so that when Officer Dibble goes,
Hello.
you say, was it section 43B of the Road Traffic Act you stopped me under?
Section 78.
Why would I stop at 43B? What the fuck's 43B? And they're fucked already. You've spoiled their psychology game. That's how to deal with those people. Spoil the psychological game that they think works on everybody. But it works on most people because of the supposed authority. But as soon as you puncture that and do something different, they're at a loss. They start making mistakes, and when they start making mistakes, you can start picking up brownie points and taking them to court, and taking them to appeal, taking the PF, taking this, and taking that, and taking the other. And that's the way to do it. Know what they think they can prosecute you for. Slap. Okay? All the best. Love you.
Welcome back, guys. So that was Indy. Beautiful man. Miss you, brother. Really do. Left all his wisdom and all his knowledge in Scotland, where it belongs. Indy as well. He gives the most beautiful hugs. The most beautiful hugs you'll get for any man you will get from Indy. Thank you for the love, brother. Thank you for the knowledge, and I'm so grateful for your presence and your company within my life. Thank you so much. Love you. Peace. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave you with a little clip from Mark Passio about sovereignty, to explain sovereignty in a bit more detail than you've probably heard anywhere else. I recommend that you go onto Mark Passio's website, whatishappeningonearth.com, and listen to his podcasts from number 1 all the way through. You'll find loads of his seminars on YouTube. He has an amazing seminar on natural law. It's 9 hours long, but it's like he's actually doing a documentary right now on natural law. He's been doing it for about the last year. I'm waiting on that being released. I'm looking forward to that being released. So I'm going to leave you with a bit of Mark Passio on sovereignty, and then after the Mark Passio clip, I'm going to play the Christine Graham speech again. You just need to listen to every single word of that speech. It's vital information for the people of Scotland. As I said in the previous episode, we tried to get Christine Graham on the radio show, on Scottish Sovereign's website when it was up and running, and she didn't want to talk about it. She refused. So Gary Collins, again, so grateful for you recording this audio of this speech, because it's vanished. It would have only been heard by the people that tuned into Parliament TV or wherever you recorded it for. They would have been the only people that heard it, but the recording that you've got is like, it's gold dust, really. It's still there for people to listen to, and it's so vital. You need to listen to that speech. As I'm saying, I'm going to drip feed you information night by night, and that'll paint you a picture, but you need the information in the Christine Graham speech. You need to absorb that to be able to take in the grand finale at the end of the trilogy. right? So take care of each other, take care of yourselves and take care of each other. If you don't take care of each other, nobody else will. One love and light, guys. Peace.
Moreover, let's break the word sovereign down. That's where we're going to come to the real meaning of the term. Sovereign is derived from the Latin adverb super. Super means above. See, in classical Latin, there's no V in classical Latin, right? There was no V character. Actually, if you wrote a V like that, it was a U, okay? And why a double U looks the way that it is. It's two V's, actually. But that sound was U in Latin, if you see a V. There's no V sound in classical Latin. It doesn't exist phonetically, all right? So this phonetic variation that we express as V or V in English, in Latin was P or B. It was represented by a P or a B. So what we're really seeing here is suver, okay? But it was pronounced in Latin super, like super. Well, what does super mean? Super, you're beyond, you're above and beyond, okay? It means above or beyond, that's what it means. A superman is one who's beyond an ordinary man, right? The Latin noun regnum comprises the second part of the etymological root of this word. Regnum, it comes from rex regis in Latin, or regis. It means king. So regnum was the king's rulership. Regnum means his reign. It's where the word reign comes from in English, regnum, in Latin. It means rulership or externally imposed control. Okay? Not control in the context, I'm going to control my emotions, I'm going to control my behavior. No. It means I'm going to control you externally by imposing my will over your will through coercion. That's the context of rulership or control that I'm talking about here. So put them together. Super regnum, sovereign, means above or beyond externally imposed rulership or control by another. That's what it means. Sovereign means not a subject to another being, like a king, like one who considers himself a king. And it means not a slave to someone who considers themselves your master. That's all sovereign means, folks. Not a slave. And why I say every single person here is a sovereign is because there is no such thing, never has been any such thing, and never will be any such thing as legitimacy to slavery. That has never existed, does not exist now, and never will exist. Slavery is an illegitimate concept. None of us are slaves. The condition of slavery has been imposed upon people, but it has never in history been legitimate. And it never will in history be legitimate. So there is no legitimacy to the concept of slavery, of the rightful rulership of another being through directly imposing your control through coercion. Doesn't exist. That's a big part of what natural law is about. We have to understand when we're saying this word, this is what is meant by sovereign, not a slave. Okay, we did a study where we asked people, are you a sovereign? Like 11% said yes. Maybe. I think it was 10 or 11%. Which I thought was almost encouraging, that 1 in 10 people knew that they were sovereign beings. It was amazing. But 90% of the human population doesn't feel that they're sovereign, doesn't know that they're sovereign. I'm telling you, it doesn't matter an iota whether you believe you are or not. I'm telling you it's an eternal truth that you are a sovereign and can never be non-sovereign. There is no such thing as someone else's legitimate rulership or ownership of you. Because there's no such thing to the legitimacy of slavery, and there never has been, and there never will be. So everyone is a sovereign. A sovereign is a monarch. Again, mon means one and archon means ruler. So when people ask me, what kind of government do you want? I tell them I want anarchy and I want monarchy. And they're like, how could you have those things simultaneously? Because if you have internal monarchy, you can have external anarchy. See, we need to have the rulership within, and we need to get rid of the rulership without. This is the kingdom we need to master, and we need to set aside the concept of mastery and slavery in the external domain, in the physical world. Sovereignty, a sovereign is a monarch, which means a single ruler who rules only the kingdom of self. Sovereignty is a state in which one controls one's own thoughts, emotions, and actions, and by bringing them into unity, or non-contradiction, or non-duality, attains mastery over one's own consciousness. Sovereignty could be considered the equivalent of true self-control, true self-mastery, true self-love, or true self-ownership. It's all of these things. And ultimately it means not a slave. That's what has to be remembered above all else.
In 1989, in the words we gathered as the Scottish Constitutional Convention do hereby acknowledge the sovereign right of the Scottish people to determine the form of government best suited to their needs. Indeed, that Constitutional Convention was proposed in a private member's bill way back in 1980 by the SNP leader, Gordon Wilson. Now, where did that sovereign right come from? There is no written UK constitution, but fragments of an incomplete constitutional jigsaw, some predating the Treaty of Union. And for example, as already been mentioned, you have to go back as far back as the Declaration of Arbroath, a declaration of Scottish independence and also of conditional monarchy. Yet the quote is, yet if he should give up, talking about Robert the Bruce, what he has begun and agree to make us our kingdom subjects, the King of England or the English, we should exert ourselves at once to drive him out as our enemy and a subverter of his own rights and ours, and make some other man who was well able to defend us as our king. For as long as but 100 of us remain alive, never will we in any condition be brought under English rule. That is a king there by leave of those at the time representing the people, a narrow bunch at the time, some 51 magnates and nobles, but nevertheless, he was on parole. Now, the significance of those words resonating through the centuries, exercised through the express will of the Scottish people, which takes me to why Queen Elizabeth is designed as Queen of England. I think, if my recollection is accurate, it was Henry VIII of the Tudor dynasty who, installing himself as head of the Church, embedded the divine right of kings to rule. Sovereignty, the embodiment of which was the monarch, was absolute. As through centuries power was removed from the Crown and transferred to the English Parliament, so was sovereignty. And so the English Parliament was indeed sovereign, but that does not overrule or supersede the conflicting principle of the sovereignty of the Scottish people. The Treaty of Union, 1706 Article 3, states that the Union be represented by one and the same Parliament, to be styled the Parliament of Great Britain. The significance is that it was not a continuation of the English Parliament, nor indeed the Scottish Parliament. Sovereignty, therefore, for Scotland remains as it always was, with the people. I can also pray and aid the case of McCormick against the Lord Advocate, 1953 session cases. It was the blowing up of the post boxes with E2R in them because Elizabeth was the first Elizabeth of Scotland. And the following remarks made obiter in that case, and I quote, "Considering that the Union legislation extinguished the Parliaments of England and Scotland and replaced them by a new Parliament of Great Britain, I have difficulty in seeing why it should have been supposed that the new Parliament of Great Britain must inherit all the peculiar characteristics of the English Parliament, as if all that happened in 1707 was that the Scottish representatives were admitted to the Parliament of England. That was not done. The principle of the unlimited sovereignty of Parliament is a distinctly English principle which has no counterpart in Scottish constitutional law." So why the potted constitutional history lesson? Because it's significant to the legitimacy of the referendum. It is, of course, not consultative. It has legal, constitutional authority as well as political authority. In 1979 and then in 1997, there was no Scottish institution to provide a mechanism for asking the Scottish people a question on the Constitution. In 1979, the UK government took it upon itself by drawing up a referendum and, of course, drew up the questions, chose the date, 1st of March 1979, right in the middle of the winter of discontent when snow was falling over Scotland. That in itself was an omen, but the 40% rule, which effectively counted the dead and those not exercising their franchise to vote as a no, was the real treachery, compounded by Sir Alec Douglas, whom, on the eve of poll broadcasting, we should vote no for a better deal. Plus ça change. Plus c'est la même chose. Now we have our own mechanism in the Scottish Parliament, but we don't need to have a Parliament. Even if this didn't exist, and the Scottish people were to stream out onto the streets of our towns and cities, into our villages, on megaphone, on marches, online, and say with a clear voice, they wanted an independent Scotland again, that would be a declaration of independence and no challenge from the Palace of Westminster, nor the corridors of the United Nations, nor this place, nor any courts could gainsay it. The Scottish people would say they'd done it, and they'd done it their way.